In this discussion, we'll talk about international trade. International trade basically means the exchange of goods and services between countries. And now we see international trade to be a common phenomenon. And without international trade, a lot of countries cannot afford to operate. A significant part of their GDP comes from international trade. So let's talk about first what are the gains of international trade? Why is international trade desirable for countries? Well, the first reason why international trade is desirable is mainly because of low prices. The consumers of a country will be able to buy less expensive products, and producers at the same time are able to buy less expensive input. And the reason why this happens is because prices in other countries can be lower than in your country because of sometimes access to natural resources. For example, sometimes some people have cheaper oil because they have excess of it, or for example there could be differences in quality of labor forces, like for example Germany might have more educated labor force, or simply the quantity of labor could be much more, like China could have higher quantity of labor, or it could be differences in capital and so on and so forth. So the idea goes this: when some countries have what we call lower prices, you can buy it from them, and that could result in you to have also an advantage because now you have a lower cost of production, and consumers at the same times will also be able to enjoy lower prices of another country. Similarly, there could be advantages in terms of more choice or greater choice available now for both consumers and producers. So, international trade enables consumers to have a greater choice of products, and this simply happens because now you have access to producers from all over the country, and that could basically be good because that could increase the standard of living for consumers of a country. Another big advantage now is this, that sometimes you might have differences in resources where, let's say, you're a country, you may not have, for example, some resources while you might have something else. So what we say is this: they are what we call different countries possessing different resources, and uh, previously, before international trade, it wasn't possible for us to get those resources which we did not have. So uh, there are some resources that you may need, but you simply do not have. And if that is the case, you don't need to worry about it anymore, because with international trade you can always sell the resources that you have in excess, and you can also get those resources which you want. And that would mean there will never be now challenges of any country suffering from a lack of a particular kind of a resource. Another significant advantage we find from international trade is economies of scale. Economies of scale is simply lower average cost due to high level of production. So when producing for international market as well as domestic one, the size of the market and therefore demand will increase for firms, and that's great because that will mean that the level of production and the size of production will also increase, which will lead to what we call economies of scale in the long run. Basically, a lower average cost. And this lower average cost would basically be good news for firms, because now with economies of scale and lower average cost, they can offer lower prices, which means they become very competitive, and that could be good because that will lead to higher profitability for the firms. Also, this economies of scale will mean that other countries will also buy from you because your prices are lower than any other country. A great example of this is China, where economies of scale has been a reason why they've been able to lower their cost of production significantly, and as a result of them, they have been able to produce for not only for their own country but also for the rest of the world. With international trade, also we'll see more competition to happen in a market. Why? Because now you are not only seeing domestic firms but also international firms competing with each other. Why is this competition good? Well, increased competition would mean greater efficiency because now domestic firms are no longer monopoly. They're competing with foreign firms, and therefore they need to basically make sure they try to be as efficient as possible. But at the same time, with the efficiency going up, you may need to also match in terms of quality and variety of goods. So if international producers are giving better quality or variety, you may need to do the same. This means that now we will see a situation where no longer you will have domestic monopolies charging a higher price or offering lower quality, because now international firms are also competing and trying to give a better service. Linked to this point is the idea that if there is international trade taking place, then one would argue this, that there will also be efficient allocation of resources. Well, when international trade takes place freely without government interference, then the countries that are best at producing certain goods, like if Pakistan is good at producing textile, it will produce them, and then it will be able to produce these goods at the lower cost, or at the cost that is the lowest out there, and take advantage of any efficiency. Now, this is what we call the law of comparative advantage, where countries will focus or specialize in those goods that they are efficient at producing as compared to another country, because the opportunity cost is much lower in terms of resource allocation. And one could therefore assume that if everyone is trying to focus on the goods that they are good at, then there will be more efficient allocation of resources, and we can at least reduce the problem of scarcity. So, international trade, if when you look at it from the perspective of resource allocation, is desirable because then everyone is doing or producing what they're good at.